Hello and welcome everyone. I decided to try something a little bit different today. There were a number of recent anime announcements over the past few weeks from conventions in Japan, and I didn't think any of them justified a single dedicated video just to them alone, but there were a few that I really wanted to talk about because there are interesting things to say about them. So we're going to do basically a news roundup of sorts, just talking about 3 new announcements. And maybe we'll continue to do this in the future when things get announced that I don't think on their own are interesting enough for a single video. So we're going to start off with Cardcaptor Sakura is getting another season, the 2nd season of Clear Card. Now, I figured this would happen eventually. If you've seen my Cardcaptor Sakura review, I basically said that, like, hey, this is Cardcaptor Sakura. Eventually they will come back to it because the way Clear Card ended, a lot of stuff is unresolved. They needed to have more to make Clear Card feel like it had a purpose. It would be hard to tell somebody, go and watch Clear Card when it didn't have a conclusion. Even though I liked Clear Card, I thought it was a nice return to form for Cardcaptor Sakura. After I personally wasn't a big fan of the Sakura card arc at the end of the original Cardcaptor Sakura, it felt like Clear Card kind of got back to what Cardcaptor Sakura was. So I'm glad to see it get more after, about 5 years since Clear Card Part 1 came out. Now, interestingly, the manga is ending, but because the Clear Card anime doesn't really follow the manga all that closely, I'm not really sure how much that matters. Obviously, I'm sure they're going to take inspiration from the Clear Card manga, but they're going to be putting their own spin on it because the Clear Card anime already did that, and it already did that inherently by being connected to the original Cardcaptor Sakura anime, which did a whole bunch of stuff different from the Cardcaptor Sakura manga. But anyway, glad to see this. Interested to know if this will completely wrap up the story or not. We don't know when this is coming out. All we got was a key visual and knowledge that this is happening. So glad to see it. Looking forward to it. The next 2 things I want to talk about are both similar in what they are. And the reason why they're noteworthy is because we don't really see anime like this. So let me explain. Recently, about 2 weeks ago, I believe, we learned that Horimiya was coming back with a new season called Horimiya Peace, airing in July, so very soon. What's notable about this is that Horimiya basically was done, right? It adapted the end of the manga. But what was somewhat controversial about Horimiya when it came out about 2 years ago was that it did that. That in 13 episodes, it covered the beginning and the end of the source material while skipping over a lot of stuff. Very similarly to another Cloverworks show that came out that very season in Promised Neverland Season 2. So Horimiya got some dislike because of that, even though of the 3 Cloverworks shows from winter 2021, it definitely fared the best. So this is very interesting because despite the fact that they adapted the end of the source material, they're now coming back to specifically do the stuff they skipped over. That is what this new season is. And we don't usually see that in anime. You know, maybe you'll get an OVA after a show is done that covers something that was skipped. If you're lucky, maybe you'll even get a movie that'll do that. But you usually won't get a dedicated season that's like, okay, even though we've covered the ending, now we're going to go back and do more stuff that took place before then. That's very, very rare. The closest thing I can think of off the top of my head is like Angel Beats, when Angel Beats got 2 OVAs after the show had ended, which both kind of filled in character-focused stuff that took place chronologically pretty early on that we just didn't get to see in the show because obviously Angel Beats was meant to be 26 episodes, got cut down to 13, and I wish they had done more of that with Angel Beats. Like, that's definitely a show that if this becomes a trend, that would be one I'd like to see them do that. Like, go back, do 13 more episodes set during the rest of the show. So it's interesting. It's also maybe a little like, I wouldn't say frustrating, but it'll be maybe awkward to recommend shows like this to people in the future. Like if you want to tell someone watch Horimiya, like do you tell them to watch season 1 and then watch this? Or do you say, no, watch it in chronological order? And what would the chronological order be? Because presumably this season will be kind of jumping around a bit based on whatever was skipped. It's interesting and it's curious because we don't have a lot of examples of this prior. And what makes it even more interesting is The next show that got announced, Quintessential Quintuplets, is getting basically the same exact thing as Horimiya. It is getting a new season that is going to cover the stuff that was skipped over. That is just, the fact that both of these got announced like back to back is noteworthy in of itself, but they're both basically the same thing. Again, it makes me wonder, are we going to see this become a trend? Are we going to see, with two entities like this coming out, which granted we don't know when the Quintessential Quintuplets season is coming out, but with them both getting announced around the same time, presumably coming out relatively close to each other, is this going to become a new trend if they prove to be successful? If people look at these new seasons in a positive light, are more shows that already ended but didn't cover everything going to follow their example and go back and make new seasons covering unadapted content? Because that would be really, really cool to see. I mean, the possibilities would be endless, because there are a lot of shows that, you know, did cover an ending, but didn't cover every piece of material from their source material. So it would be really interesting to see what other studios might say, hey, this worked out for them, let's do it too. In the case of Quintuplets, it's also a little more interesting than Horimiya, because the movie for Quintuplets like just came out. I think it came out, last year in Japan. It's not even like widely available now in the West. Like, it hasn't been put out on Blu-ray yet. So it's very noteworthy that so quickly after Quintuplets ended, they're like, no, let's go back and do more. Like, at least with Horimiya, there's a more than 2-year gap. Like, they had time to look at how people responded to the way the show was done and presumably decide to go in this direction. With Quintuplets, like, yes, people had a similar reaction because the movie jumped and skipped a lot of material from where season 2 had ended. So presumably this will mostly focus on stuff in between season 2 and the movie. Although, to be fair, it might do more. I don't know exactly what got skipped over, but I know when the movie was announced, a lot of people were disappointed because they wanted a third season because they didn't think the movie could cover everything, and of course it didn't. So it's very interesting that there's such a quick turnover here between the movie coming out and them doing this, which makes me wonder, did they decide to do this even while they were working on the movie or shortly after the movie came out because they saw how people were reacting to the announcement of it, or was this always planned? I don't know, but it's really, really interesting that this is happening so quickly. So yeah, I mean, this, I think, could be the start of a really interesting new trend in anime if these two seasons are successful, because you might see other studios decide to do the same thing with shows that they've adapted but not covered everything or skipped over a lot of material specifically. So I hope that these both go well. I am excited to see them because, you know, I'm a big fan of Quintuplets. I'd like to see more of Quintuplets, even if, again, it's a little awkward to see the end of it and then go back and watch another season, and then it might get awkward to recommend it depending on how it goes, especially with Horimiya. We'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, we'll get an idea of how this will work out with Horimiya very shortly because it's coming out next season, and we'll hopefully get an idea of how well it's being received over in Japan and over here as well. So thank you for watching. Those are the 3 topics that I wanted to cover. If you liked this type of video, this sort of news roundup-y kind of structure, let me know in the comments below. We may revisit it in the future. And if you have anything to add regarding Cardcaptor Sakura, Horimiya, or Quintessential Quintuplets and their new seasons, let me know in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And take care, everyone. I'll see you next time.